Hello, welcome to another Michigan TypeScript video. This one's going to be quite a lot different because Josh and I started a conference. I don't know if you know, there's this thing SquiggleConf. You can see your shirt, Josh. There you go. Okay. October 3rd to 4th, 2024. So we had a conference. I know that you may not have a conference yourself. And so if you're not interested, that's fine. We won't hate you if you click away now. But we wanted to share some of the stuff we learned having a conference. It's a software engineering conference that's focused on devtools, that's focused on cross-language devtools as well. So there was Zig representation and, of course, TypeScript, but also a lot of Rust and plenty of other WebAssembly and other things. So we think that it's a really good idea if we just share some of the stuff that we learned, because some of them are kind of kooky, some of them are a bit embarrassing, but hey, that's fine. And we just thought we'd jump in. We kind of categorized the video here for you. So we're going to start off with talking about the first thing that happened chronologically after we decided to have the conference, which is the CFP.
Let's just do it. Let's go chronologically. The first thing most people see with a conference chronologically is the CFP, call for papers or call for proposals. I think I was pretty happy with how the CFP for SquiggleConf 2024 went. I've done a lot of CFPs on various aspects of it prior to this, so we had a lot of structure, which was good. In the end, we got 157 submissions from just over 100 people, 101 people. I think 150 and 100 were kind of my check mark of happiness. I think the biggest flaw that we had was we didn't exactly know what we were asking for beyond just generally what do you want to talk about. And we wish we'd asked a little more what the people's relationship to the tool is, or at least given them more suggestions of the categories we do or don't want. I think for 2025, we're
we kind of knew in advance. Yeah, we want documentation talks. We want accessibility talks. We know that we want to talk. We will not have SquiggleConf without a talk about accessibility. And so we should have just said that outright to people instead of expecting some people to figure that out on their own. So just telling them we'd love a talk on here's an example of 10 talks that we'd love to see. Because some of them are, we can say in advance, every year we'd love to have a talk about documentation or whatever, like I said, accessibility.
Yeah, for sure. We got, I was expecting a lot more AI and blockchain spam than we actually got. There was, of course, spam about dumb crypto stuff that no one should ever talk about publicly. There were a few actual good submissions, though. I think just within AI, which we strongly considered. I don't think we ended up having AI in the conference, but I think that was a good delineation. I wish we told people that you can feature AI. It's just we're not an AI conference. We're a dev tooling conference. It has to serve the core concept of dev tooling.
Right. And, we'll put it on the screen. The CFP is not quite yet open for SquiggleConf 2025, but it will be in a week and a half. So this is what we're doing next year. And I think we're going to make a much better impact on getting those great CFPs that any conference is looking for that fit the mission of the conference. But speaking of mission, I'm thinking of the grading process. Another process snafu that we ran ourselves into is we didn't give ourselves enough time.
It's funny. There have been a few moments with the conference besides the conference itself where it feels like everything is just happening all at once. And the time between CFP closes and we need to announce the thing felt like the first of those, oh my God, it's all happening at the same time. For 2025, we're expanding it by a week or two with the time range so that if someone takes the maximum time to get back to us and then says no, and then we have another person takes the max time, we're still within our time bounds. We got really lucky with 2024, though, that no one took 3 weeks to get back to us or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, you're more experienced in this stuff than me, Josh, but I remember there was a point when you were and then we have to give them time to tell us yes. And I was like, wait, isn't the CFP submission them telling us yes? Can't we just say you're in and then they're in and then that's that? We don't have to go back and forth again. But yeah, actually, it makes a lot of sense when you sit and think about it. So you kind of do have to do things in multiple passes and split it out. And it can take a lot of time for people to get back to you. Some, people are on vacation or something. So that's another thing I think we're going to be doing much better this time is telling people specific timelines on you will hear back to us by this date. We will ask for a response by that date. And then they can know exactly what to expect. Nothing worse than a CFP that you submitted that you feel up in the air about what's going on. Am I accepted? Am I not?
Yeah. It always shocks me what the minimum bars are that are actually kind of difficult to get to. Giving people feedback on their talk is hard. Not a lot of people ask for it, but it's just it's a lot of submissions, 157 submissions, each of which we individually read multiple times, went over, tried to bucket, tried to categorize. It's not an easy process.
Yeah, and sometimes it's simple things that we miss, somebody might not mention what their relationship to the tool is, and the way the CFP is written, you go oh, they're the person who made this, and then later on you realize, wait a second, they're not the person who made this. I mean, this is still cool, but from an audience perspective, it's always preferable to hear from the person who made the thing rather than somebody else. Not that, it's necessarily bad one way or the other, but it's just something to keep in mind. And so it's like keeping all of these things in your head while you're trying to read the submissions is tough.
Yeah, so one of the things we did with the CFP that I liked was splitting out any questions that you don't actually need. Like a lot of CFPs will ask you your t-shirt size as a speaker. CFPs are intimidating enough for first timers and a lot to go through for everyone as it is. You don't need like t-shirt size and like what's the right number to reach you in case of emergency. We split that all out into like a follow-up form, but we didn't actually include everything we needed in that follow-up form. Like we missed the t-shirt size.
The t-shirt size, yeah, we didn't know. We had to... And I had to guess later, like just, it's like a numbers game. I think like you can just get a lot of t-shirts and hope that you'll have enough. And we did. So it was okay. Yeah. But
real well. Yeah. We have all these ideas that we're kind of champing at the bit about of like making a prerequisite that you have to give us a talk like dry run a week or two before the conference. We didn't actually put those into the 2024 CFP. We just like didn't have enough time to finalize this like new and weird requirement that some people would hate. But it is something we're doing for 2025 that like a lot of talks just, I do this, every speaker does this. They get procrastinated until the last minute and then you miss like basic accessibility points on the slides or like narrative flaws that could have been easily caught earlier.
Most of the people, I think, were very interested in having, like, we had some very experienced speakers at last year's conference, and some of the most experienced speakers were very eager to have a sit-down feedback session about their talk, which I thought was very interesting because, you could think it might be the opposite way that they're like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't need any of this. But no, it wasn't that at all. And, at the end of the day, too, I think I've seen it now from the other side, and I've been a conference submitter before, but like now running a conference, I think we'll get into this later about money, but like SquiggleConf did not make any money last year. Josh and I both paid for the conference out of our own pockets, but we tried to get as close to breaking even as possible. And this thing is a business in a lot of ways. You're trying to get people to pay their money to go do a thing or have an experience, and you want it to be a great experience. So it's really good to make sure that like all of these things are accounted for and the speakers are really ready to give it their all, because people worked very hard for their money that they spent to come to the conference, and we want to respect that and like we want to have an awesome conference. That's why we're doing this. So yeah, it's more of a business than a meetup, and I'm more used to meetups myself. So
Yeah. Well, what kept running through our mind was the case of like someone who's at like this little company that's not making a profit, and they beg and somehow manage to get the ticket paid for by the company. And then they go and they have a bad experience and cannot justify the ticket cost. And that company never sponsors going to a conference again. Like that was a persistent mini nightmare that I had of okay, we really need to lock down the speaker experience, the attendee experience, and all that ahead of time. Speaking of speaker experience, we never had one solid place for speakers or speaker likes, like the MCs, to find information, and that's like an oops in retrospect. Someone actually missed the speaker sponsored dinner because they were in this like weird in between category where they weren't a speaker but they were with the sponsor, but ... And for 2025 we're making definitive pages of like, this is the speaker hub, this is the sponsor hub, this is the ... I think that'll fix things.
Yeah, and just having them like really explicit instructions on where to go and what to do. And some people don't care and won't read it, but some people will. And for those people, it's very important. But yeah, all that goes on the website. So there's a good segue into the next section.
The website. Yeah. It always shocks me. One of the other things that how like not polished most conference websites are. And then you realize, okay, these people, whoever's running the conference is already overbooked and underpaid for the work. And now you kind of understand why like most conference websites just have the barest minimum of information the way ours did. We're really happy that ours was accessible. Like I did like a screen reader audit, Lighthouse Acts, etc. But we really just had like just barely the information that was needed on there, and we did miss like some FAQs. Like for example, we didn't say explicitly that none of our talks are paid, which is actually like a really big value prop for a conference, that it's like actual speaking, not just like paid slots.
It's funny too, because we put through a lot of effort to make sure that we didn't have that kind of dynamic. We've all been to conferences where I don't know why this is a thing, but the the paid sponsors get up there on stage and then don't seem to have anything compelling to tell you, and it's weird and uncomfortable for everyone. And then, so we don't have anything like that going on. And we did actually, maybe it's good to clarify, we did actually have sponsors that had workshops, but in both cases, it was after we accepted them as a workshop. So they were NX and Ingest. Like, we reached out to, they submitted, and then we came back to them and said, hey, these are great talks, but we could make an even better workshop out of this. What do you think? We'd just like to have you on, no, sponsorship, as a workshop. And so it's like those relationships started from there, but they never were approached in that way as being like a paid to play kind of thing. And we're going to continue that in the future. I think it's like the quality of the experience that people have is the most important thing by far.
Yeah. Before we move on to sponsors. Yeah. Website too. I think one of the things you, Dimitri, pushed for that I wish I'd been more receptive to was like putting more information to sell the city. Like a lot of people are local and they know what's in Boston because they live here, but also a lot of other people, especially like conference sponsor, paid people to go there. They're coming here. They're deciding between us and other conferences. Like, you really got to sell the city of like, what's the fun touristy stuff? What is it going to be a good vibe?
It's one of the best times to see New England. It's like Boston in the fall. It's beautiful, and it's not super cold yet, but it's not swelteringly hot and sweaty either. And it's just fresh and nice, and the fall colors. And yep, it's nice to give people like, here are the concerts that are happening this weekend, and here are the things that are going on. Just to make it easy. And like another one was the visa stuff. Like we did actually submit one visa form for someone, but it was done kind of after the fact of putting the website together. And I think going forward, we're going to have that much more accessible for people. So if you're coming from out of country and you need help with the visa process, we'll happily help you to come to the conference. It's really not that big of a deal. It's like a standard form, and we just kind of send it out. But, even more travel information is always helpful. So having all of that information about like how to take the subway, how to take just like everything that there is about how to access where we are. Thankfully, it's in a super, super central location in the very heart of downtown Boston, like the very heart of downtown Boston. So we're really lucky about the venue that we have. It's at the New England Aquarium. So it's very easy to access, but it makes it even easier if you can tell people, go to this parking garage. That's the cheapest one. We vetted all the local options, this and that. And just make it easier for people.
Yeah.
Well, on to sponsors then.
Sponsors.
So, that the website point you were just making is really is another element. Like we said, we want to have kind of like a speaker's, everything there is to know about being a speaker. When you have a conference, there's a thing called a sponsorship prospectus that you send out. And what this is it's like some industries, they call this a sell sheet. So you send it to people who may be thinking about sponsoring the conference, and it gives them a kind of breakdown of all the reasons that they should sponsor the conference, and also what it costs to sponsor the conference, and all the different elements of it. And there's just more information that they always want to have, and we can add that. But having a place, once you make that document and send it out, it's like it's an email or whatever, it's locked. It'd be nice if there was a place where you can just continually add information over years even. It's like this largely doesn't change a lot of the answers to some of these questions from year to year. So that's something that we're going to be working on this year, just to make it more simple for sponsors to have information about what they need. And Josh, you mentioned like we had missing the speaker sponsors dinner that happens the night before the conference. Like, if they know exactly where that stuff is and that information is available to them, it kind of removes the problem.
Yeah, for sure. We also had a snafu with a sponsor where there was a disconnect and miscommunication, really just on our end, about one of the perks that they'd asked for in the sponsorship. And I think this wouldn't have been wholly solved by the sponsorship portal, but at the very least, like being very clear about the deadlines for like, this is when any like custom perks are created, and like, this is when we'll flight things, and this is when we'll get back to you with any like changes that we need to do. That would have been helpful for us to make sure that we didn't miscommunicate with sponsors. Yeah, because
it's like, it's weird in a way. There's like two minds that you have running a conference. The first is being very stressed out about the experience of the attendees being amazing. And then there's this whole complete other set of worries about making sure that the sponsors' experience is amazing, that they're getting out of it what they paid for. What they showed up for. Maybe everybody thinks this, but I think our tiers were, especially for the first year, were quite reasonable. So I'm hoping that, nobody feels like they, had to shell out an arm and a leg and, something like that. But it's something that's always on your mind. Like, I want to make sure that they just feel great and they have, the tablecloth that they get is pressed and not has a bunch of wrinkles and stuff. It's like little things like that you see and you start thinking about just to make sure that everything that you could have done to make it a great experience for everybody. But it's just that everybody is split into two very different groups with very different needs. So it makes it hard.
Which brings up a third category of people. Yeah. Yes. The local meetups. There's a whole other perspective of I'm a local meetup or a student club or boot camp or DEI improvement group or some such, whatever local organization. I've been reached out to by SquiggleConf because they're trying to get local organizations involved. Where do we go from there? And we started that process way too late. What was it? Like 2 months before the conference?
No, dude, it was like 1 month. It
Yeah.
was like 1 month. We're calling people every day. Yeah. On the weekend, they're like, "Why? Can we talk on Monday?" It's like, not really. Yeah. I mean, can we talk today?
We were throwing out free tickets at the end, or not free, but like severe ticket discounts towards the end because we just didn't have the time or bandwidth to like do like fancy negotiations and perks and tiers. And we honestly just
to these groups,
to the local meetups and such. But like we just didn't have the time, like we announced, what was it, in like May or something, SquiggleConf 2024, which is happening in October. Like Dimitri has kids, I have cats, roughly the same thing. Like we got stuff going on, So yeah, this year we have like a whole person in charge of local meetups. We've got like actual, paperwork and ideas of what we want to push for. But yeah, that was very disorganized for 2024.
It'll get better. I think this is something that we can really crush it this year. And we have, I should mention, the first year was just me and Josh largely, but, and there are lots of other people who helped in other ways, but it was, most of the effort was Josh and I, but now we have a whole team of 8 people. And so like we have somebody who's really dedicated to these things and focused on, going to actually physically go to some of these local meetups and talk with these people and get them involved and make sure they know. By the way, Boston doesn't really have a like hard software engineering conference other than SquiggleConf. There's like they're like more business tech related conferences, but this is it. If you're in Boston, this is your conference. If you're a software engineer, so we really want people to feel like they have ownership over this because, like we said, we're not getting rich off of this thing. This is a passion project for both of us for sure, and it will always be that way. And we want to make sure that people have what they need. There was one thing that we were talking about sponsors and stuff that we didn't mention, which is something I think did go really well that will continue. I know this is like the learnings video, but something I'm really proud of is we had a Discord that was really actively used for the sponsors and the speakers and the MCs and volunteers. We made tons of private channels for everyone. So like every speaker had their own private channel, and we like some of them really used it. Like every single day, basically, we're talking about like, visa stuff or, what do you think about this change to my slides or something. So it was very active. One thing I think we could have done better, though, is making sure that every single sponsor had that channel and was in the channel. So we made the channel for all of them and we invited them to it, but some of them never joined. So they didn't feel the need to, and that's fine. But it was a place where they could have asked quick questions, and we want to make sure they understand that like this is the primary means of communicating with us, not via email. We want to be able to get back to you really quickly when you have a question. Josh and I are both terminally online, I think is the term. So yeah. Here's a fun one.
Go ahead, Dimitri.
Well, it's just like the silliest thing, Josh. It's like when you have a thing like this, you have dreams and aspirations for what it will be. And Josh is a weird and quirky guy for anyone who doesn't know. And one of his weird and quirky dreams is he really wanted the thank you cards to have a wax seal on them.
It's so classy. No one else does that. It's A+, Your dreams when you host a big event go from the highest and mightiest at the very beginning of like, I want wax seals to just don't burn the goddamn aquarium down.
Yeah,
towards the end
seriously. So we didn't end up getting the time to put wax seals together. I think it was like fairly late in the process. You're like, Dimitri, could we do wax seals? And I'm like, Josh, no, we can't do wax seals. You're like, well, I could take it on. What if I do wax seal? And it's just like, oh man, we didn't get to it, but we will get to it this year. And so that'll be a cool thing that like you write thank you cards and thank you notes to the speakers and the sponsors. I think this one was another one we probably tried a little too hard on for the kind of bandwidth that was available. So we made custom cards that we custom designed and custom printed. I have a very nice photo printer, and we printed all the thank you cards, and I got the thank you stock, and we printed it ourselves. But that process took a long time. And it also meant that it wasn't like we could split up the work in advance of the conference. So I live in Michigan and Josh lives in Boston. So that means that like if I print them, then either like I have to write them or we write them when we're together. But I only drove over like 2 days before the conference. So that gives us a very tight window to write the thank you notes. So we were up the night before the conference very late writing thank you cards, which is so silly because that's the thing that we could have done. Okay, that's fair. I was the one. It's a we in my mind. We're a team.
In your mind, it's a we because you're a generous man. I didn't do anything. I didn't sign a single thank you card. I don't know. I honestly wasn't trying to get out of the task. I just didn't want to do it. And somehow my subconscious put me in different tasks the entire time. But that's a learning. That's a learning that like the week of the conference, you can't do anything. Like you can in theory, but there's nothing you can reliably be relied upon to do.
Yeah. Anything that I think that's like the general rule, like anything that can possibly physically, feasibly be done in advance has to be done in advance because in the moment, things will come up. And I mean, that's actually a good segue into another thing. Like I'd say the number one thing that we took away from last year's experience was that it was a success. We feel good about what we did and we're happy about it. What would have made it even better is a very complete run of show. Yep. So a run of show is like a document where you just specify, here's exactly what will physically occur at every moment and who is responsible for it. And so the funniest thing is we didn't have a person lined up to go pick up the lanyards. So, when you go to a conference, you have these lanyards that keep your badge, around your neck that hold your badge. And we had custom lanyards printed. They're very, very nice. And so those are made the day, they make them mostly in advance, but there's a segment of them that are the badges that are made the night before. You give them they make most of them in advance, and then you give them like 2 days before or the night before the last remaining scragglers that came in and their names for their badges. So that means that you pick up all the badges at once the night before the conference. Well, the night before the conference, I was setting up the venue and the AV equipment and all that stuff, like really, really occupied. And Josh was working on the volunteering event. So neither of us picked up the badges. And later that night, we're like, wait a second, where are the badges? And we looked at the email and like, the people who make the badges are like, where are you guys? We're going to close the shop. Like, what's going on? And so they ended up leaving them like it's a package delivered to them. They left the package outside of their doorstep. And we were both at that time not even available because we had to go to the speaker sponsor dinner. So we had a volunteer that was available, and Dave. So thank you, Dave. And Dave drove over there and picked them up last second with no notice. And, it's just like stuff like that will happen. But that's like such a silly thing that could have just been avoided. Thankfully, it didn't affect it didn't affect anything. Like, you're hearing about it now, but attendees don't even know these things going on behind the scenes. But it was super stressful for us because like, imagine going to the conference, we have badges, but no lanyards.
Every little thing that happens last minute takes away time. It's like the classic, like, oh, we could develop this, but do we have the bandwidth? So like I missed out on some of the volunteering event because I had to go pick up a hotspot from AT&T, which I ended up having to return after a while because it just barely made it through the event and was clearly not the quality as advertised. And then, instead of doing that, I could have gone to pick up it, so on and so forth.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, logistical things happen. I mean, there's things that I think that were small little things that we realized later could have been so easy if we had just asked. Like one of them was we should ask for the organizers to be on the first floor of the hotel. Yeah. And the reason is because we're coming and going constantly. We had big carts and full of equipment and boxes of T-shirts and the lanyards and all these things. And we were on like the 5th floor or something. So there were available spaces on the first floor, but we just didn't know to ask that. So like now we know to ask like, hey, by the way, can we just make sure that, these specific people have first floor? So we're not going up and down the elevator all the time and around tight corners.
By the way, I want to talk more about the hotel because, oh my God, the Harborside Inn, it's one of my favorite places now. It was really nice. Hotels in a downtown.
Swanky almost.
Nice. Here's the thing though, like it's a nice swanky hotel, beautiful lobby, very good, like local-ish restaurant. It's not like, some Applebee's style chain. And it's reasonably priced and has super friendly people. Like I'm shook at how much better and like not corporate hellscape the hotel was compared to almost every other
Literally.
hotel in the area. A couple other good
Yeah.
ones we talked to, but Harborside Inn was just, we got so lucky that they're as amazing as they are.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like it's kind of soul crushing to like, check into the Marriott, I think sometimes. So it's nice, but this was a really cool experience, and it was a really nice hotel, so we're really happy. One of the things though I think we're really not a little bit happy with is wow, there are a lot of taxes that go into booking a hotel room in Boston. So there's like a convention center fee, there's a housing fee, there's like 6 different taxes. And so we negotiated a rate in advance, for all of the speakers and organizers. And that rate was like $60 less than what we ended up actually paying. And, you multiply that out, $60 for times 20 people times 4 nights. I don't know I'm not good at numbers, but that's a lot of money that
Thousands,
you weren't,
according to Google.
It's a lot of money that you it just said thousands. We weren't expecting to pay that because it wasn't part of what we negotiated, but I think the hotel just kind of like assumed that we knew that. Well, we didn't know that.
Yeah.
And we also didn't know. But we also didn't know that these kinds of things are not tax exempt. So we are a charity. I mean, we have a 501c3 for Squiggle, and we kind of just thought that meant, because we're naive, I guess. We're not naive anymore. We kind of thought that meant that it would be no problem, or like we wouldn't have to pay the taxes. But none of those taxes, like we kind of tried to approach them about that, but they're like, the only people who don't pay these taxes are like the FBI. Like if you're an FBI agent on FBI activity duty and you have to stay at the hotel, like then there's like a process where we can get your manager. And it's like the whole thing. I was like, okay, well, we're not the FBI.
Has a process.
Even the FBI, it's not a yes. It's a yes, but maybe. So, but things are expensive.
Yeah. You want to talk about more expensive stuff? Food?
New
section. Oh my God.
Oh boy.
I'm going to try to contain my irate feels on this, but we didn't realize coming in how locked in basically every conference venue is to exactly one food provider or service. In our case, it was Sodexo, and I feel comfortable saying Sodexo aloud because every whatever they're called food provider service for a venue is like this. But yeah, it's so expensive. There's all this stuff that goes behind the scenes. Like they have all these stringent standards for like food quality and safety and cleanliness, and then they're like union things coming into play. So like you cannot bring in your own food. Technically you can if there's something they can't accommodate, but they can accommodate basically anything. And then the pricing on the surface sounds absurd. $300 was the cost of the water.
Just water.
What?
Just to have
water.
Just to have water. Just like for the record. So it's just like there's like what is it called? A tub. There's a thing of water. A tub sounds like a bathtub.
The water cooler from the
There's
office.
a water cooler. Okay, yeah. And then you push a little tab and the water falls out. That's it. We're not talking about like still, chilled, sparkling water. Just regular water. $300.
I could have taken an Uber to Costco, bought 3 water bottles per attendee, and Ubered back and paid less money than we ended up paying for the water at SquiggleConf.
But that's how it goes. And they set it up on a table and they have somebody there standing and watching it doesn't get tipped over or something. So, I mean, I get it, but it was just shocking. I think we're new to this, and the sheer cost of some of these things is pretty. It'll make your pulse rise some days to know how much it's really costing. So
because you're like you said, Dimitri, you're paying for the person, the service, the safety, the guarantees, the liability insurance, all that stuff.
Yeah. And we want people to have a good experience. So we don't, if the water did tip over, we're running the conference. So yeah, they would have been on top of it. We're running the conference. We can't be like untipping over the water and filling it back up and stuff. Like we have to focus on what we're doing. So it makes sense. But
yeah. One more flaw though, or thing we learned rather, is that in trying to be very inclusive and making sure that anyone who has like veganism or dietary restrictions, religious things, etc., is accounted for, we went above and beyond. We had way more vegan options than we needed, and in theory, on the surface, having more vegan options doesn't sound bad, but vegan options tend to be, and pardon me, my vegan friends, more expensive and less yummy than the non-vegan options. So the fact that we had so many leftover like vegan cookies meant that other people didn't have as nice of a situation. We had almost no vegans actually go to the conference. So for 2025, we're trying to keep a closer track of like how much of this stuff do we actually need to account for, and then some extra just in case, rather than just going whole hog on the vegan cookies.
I think it's tough too because like sometimes you hear that word if you're not a vegan or vegetarian or something, or I don't know. Maybe this is too much of an aside, but I really love rice checks. And for years, they put gluten-free on the box of rice checks. And I was like, man, they had to change the formula. It's just like such a simple, no sugar food. So I didn't have rice checks for a few years. And then one day I realized, I was like, wait a second. Rice doesn't have gluten. It was always gluten-free. And I got it. And yeah, it turns out it's the same. So sometimes you can kind of play a trick on yourself. There's lots of things that we could list and make available that are vegetarian or vegan that, Oreos are vegan, for example. Like if we had Oreos there and lots of people loved the Oreos, well, like we'll still do that. We're not going to people who are vegan are aware that Oreos are vegan. We don't need to tell them these are already vegan. They know. So yeah, but we did ask on the forum, and we'll keep asking for any dietary restrictions. I mean, it didn't happen to us. Actually, nothing bad happened to us. There was no, as a conference organizer, you really freak out about like, of course you don't want anyone to be like sexually harassed or for somebody to have an anaphylactic shock because they have a food allergy that wasn't listed, or like there's lots of like very strong negative things that could happen that you literally couldn't, you're not there, you didn't do it, you can't really control. And so I think that part of the reason we went so hardcore on the vegetarian vegan stuff is because we just really wanted people to feel welcome and have a good experience. And that's our mindset. So we aired a little too hard towards that, but maybe that's okay.
Better to be safe than in jail. Another one last little note on this is that we didn't realize how different some of the terms are cross culture, cross country, and what the like coping mechanisms for other people's lack of understanding are. So like one person said that they were a vegan. They weren't actually vegan. It's just that where they're from, you typically say that because no one else around you understands it. I'm misphrasing, so I'm going to keep the country anonymous. Turns out they were actually pescatarian or something like that. And then we went above and beyond and were very surprised to see them eating fish. But it was
means different things.
Something you learn.
I had a friend from Argentina that tried to convince me that in Argentina, just like in the US, you consider it vegetarian if you eat fish. A lot of people do anyway. I know that it's not technically the word, but they tried to convince me that if you eat chicken in Argentina, that they also consider that vegetarian if you only eat chicken. And I was like, I don't think that's true. And I've asked other Argentinians since then, and they all told me it's baloney. So I don't know. If you're Argentinian, please let us know.
Yeah,
if there's
like and subscribe if you're Argentinian.
Yeah, anyway. Exactly.
Cool. Okay. One last bullet or points in the like learnings thing, AV. I think that's you, Dimitri.
Yeah. Well, thankfully we did it. We have a lot of experience with this. You'll see there's another video here on Michigan TypeScript about our AV rig, and it got a lot more beefed up for SquiggleConf. And so thankfully we didn't have to deal with having an outside company, but it's like tens of thousands of dollars to have an AV, like a good AV experience. And there's something that we did at Squiggle. There's two things that we did that would have extremely raised the price. Actually, I can just tell you, it's for what we did at SquiggleConf this year, and we got some quotes just out of curiosity. It would be like the quotes all came in between $50,000 and $100,000 just for the AV parts.
Yeah, my God.
And part of what's hard about what we did is two things. The first is that, the people that are coming to speak at this conference often need their laptop in front of them because they're live coding. So it's not as simple as like they just have a clicker and they're just advancing slides, which is the way it is for a lot of places. So that means, just that fact means that we have to connect all of their laptops and make sure that they work and they're set up and they're ready to go. I don't know if anybody's ever had this experience, but it's not always a dream to connect your laptop to an external display and get it to work and get it to recognize and get everything to sync up. But we had to do this 16 times. That's the first part. Usually conferences, what they do is they have like a conference laptop that's like a known configuration that works, and you send them the slides and they put the slides in the laptop and give you a clicker and you walk out on the stage. That's very regular. It's not all the time, but it's common that happens. I think for software engineering conferences, we're the exception to the rule. But for other kinds of conferences, you go to a business conference, a design conference, or whatever, they don't need their laptop, so they're not doing that. So that's number one that made it more hard. The second thing is, I think our eyes were just too big for our what's the phrase? Like your eyes are bigger than your
stomach.
than your stomach. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
We accepted a lot of speakers and later realized that like we don't really have enough time for all the speakers that we accepted.
Very long.
And one of the workarounds that we did for that, instead of taking time away from them, which we really did not want to do, I thought it seems like a breach of trust to say you're going to have 30 minutes and then later you say you're having 28 or something like that. We did a system where on one half of the stage, there's a speaker, and on the other half of the stage, there's a section for Q&A. So the podium with the speaker is where they're largely talking, and then when they're done with their speech, or their they're done with their presentation, the MC will take them over to the other side of the stage to do like a 3-minute Q&A. Well, that 3 minutes is where we bring the next laptop on and get it ready to go and get it set up. And then the next speaker comes out immediately after the QA is over. So from the audience's perspective, oh man, it was wonderful because there's literally no downtime whatsoever. It's like speaker, QA, break, speaker, QA, break. That's kind of like the way it goes. And it just kept everything going real lickety split. And I think that was really exciting. The thing is, asking an AV company to do that is very expensive because there's a lot of pressure, like time pressure. And we did actually stay on time throughout the day. It kind of tracks back and, forward and back. But yeah. Anyway, we're getting into things that went well, actually.
Yeah. I mean, to cap off the things that didn't go well, we started late because someone's laptop decided after the tech check to stop working. Thank you, Apple, for making these fancy new Macs. And then somehow through the day, we just nailed, or rather you and Dimitri nailed the timing so much that we made up. But yeah, for next year, we're gonna have 2 days. I mean, we're having, I should say, 2 days for 2025 and fewer speakers per day. So we'll have the known configuration laptop. Like for a lot of the speakers, they did just have slides. So let's say half of the speakers, they did just have slides. If we would have told them, just send us your slides, they would have said, yeah, that's great. Easier
and like that would have been half as many laptop like pre-boardings as it was. And like Josh said, those M1, especially that first generation M1 Macs, they can only connect to one screen. And so anyway, I don't want to get too far into it, but there's like technical barriers that you can't get over that make it very difficult for them to do what they want to do on stage and they have a confidence monitor. Actually, there are 3 confidence monitors in front of them. So it's like a whole thing, but all the same, things did go well. So
let's talk about it. What went well. Dude, there's so many points here. We could keep going, but just to start, the speakers, we had very high audience ratings. No one came away angry, which from what I understand is somewhat uncommon. We had several speakers who, like, audience members were glowing about. I was so happy. I mean, I think we should take some credit, egotistically, for doing so much work on the CFP and the speaker prep, those 2 processes. But like, really, shout out to the speakers. They were phenomenal. Yeah. Really happy about that. Stacked lineup for the first year. That was like a lot of people told us that before the conference happened, like, how did you arrange this? I don't know. It's what's the Wayne's World thing? Like, book them and they will come. That was kind of the experience that we had. Yeah. Also, somewhat included with the speakers is the MCs. We booked 2 awesome MCs, and then one, Fatima, had like a last minute thing, so it was just Nick at the conference. But both of them are great people. Nick has MC'd multiple TS comms. He knows what he's doing. He kept coming up with fish puns, which it's perfectly matched the vibe. The aquarium aquarium, squiggles, and all this. Yeah. Lots of positive feedback from us to Nick. So yeah, shout out Nick for lasting the whole day. And people kept telling me like the vibes were really great. And I don't know exactly what that means. Maybe I'm too old to know what that really means in today's vernacular, but I think it's a good thing, right? I mean, it was a very grassroots effort because it's the first year of a conference. I think like any conference, the first year, except Modern Front Ends Live? Modern Front Ends Live. Ugh. Maybe not that one. Still, maybe not that one. Drop out last minute on that one. I hear the vibes were fantastic from a particular point of view. Anyway, yeah, Dimitri, I think for your generation, it's more that things were groovy would be the right good vibrations. Okay, yes. Yeah. The volunteers were also awesome. The volunteers. We had some really fantastic. I can think of some of them anyway. So Dave, who helped on the AV stuff, Thomas, Yona, Hadley, Sahana, Mark Henderson from the aquarium was actually super duper helpful. I mean, that's his job, but he knew the space. This is a huge IMAX theater. It's a big space. It's got a lot of bells and whistles and things going on, and we were able to get things set up and going really quickly. And that's a testament to their kind of dedication to the craft, I think. Yeah, for sure. We'll talk more about the after hangout later, but Julia Rallis from Howl at the Moon on her end for the hangout, phenomenal. Just I couldn't ask for better because I didn't know what to ask, and Julia knew the questions and answers already. It was incredible. Yeah, several of the people who are key here, like Hadley and Sahana, are now on the team for SquiggleConf 2025.
Yes.
You know,
they graduated from volunteer to, I think that's a good progression, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I think also the space itself was surprisingly nice. It was a relatively small entryway, which was honestly kind of worrisome for us. We ended up having exactly one sponsor booth after exactly two sponsors asked for a sponsor booth, which meant that it was very casual.
That was another learning, I guess we didn't mention about sponsors. They were like largely not that interested in having a booth. It's a lot of work for them, I guess, is kind of like, we asked a couple of them, like, it's part of what you paid for, you can have it. And they're like, no, we don't want that. So it's a learning for us. Some sponsors really do want that. I think, like, the way I look at it is I think the people who took us up on the offer got a really great deal because they had, like, like Josh said, it's like full reign of the whole conference and all of the people that were there. So I think the sponsors that showed up got more for their, like, more bang for their buck, but people want different things out of it. Some people just really wanted to be on the videos or, on the t-shirt or something. So yeah, everybody has different goals.
One more thing on the sponsors, we tried very hard to keep it to like fit, like what is the conference actually about? Like we didn't take in any like random, like we make SaaS services for B2B companies. Like the sponsors were actually relevant. Like Ingest, Prisma, DataStax, OpenJS Foundation, and so on. So sorry to all the other ones. We don't have time to list you all. Like it's actual companies that like are relevant and people at the conference would be legitimately interested in hearing from. I think that was really key for us.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, tell us about the after conference event. That was mostly your thing. I had very little to do with that. Josh organized almost all of it.
Dimitri spends the entire day sweating about AV, and then I enjoy a couple hours of pouring mocktails for people at Howl at the Moon, just a local music and bar venue. But yeah, it was fun. So a lot of conferences will do parties. They'll do like bar get-togethers or like mini cruise boats or whatever, which are very fun. For us though, we wanted to emphasize the casual, chill, and like inclusive aspects of it, as in no alcohol freely flowing, no alcohol provided in the event. For various reasons, I don't think alcohol belongs at a professional work conference. It's super dangerous, and we were scared enough as it is without adding booze. But yeah, so we didn't want to call it a party. We never actually found a good word for it, but like an activity, the hangout. It was really fun.
After conference activity, yeah, it's pretty lame sounding, but that's all right.
Flows off the tongue. Yeah, so we like hung out in the basement, we reserved the space of the local place. We set up a mocktail bar, which was really just I bought a lemonade, like a juice squeezer off Amazon for like $80, and they provided us with buckets upon buckets of lemons and fun sugary syrups. And I just stood
basement
there.
Basement undersells it, Josh. It was like it was very beautiful. It was like a small private club. It was like the walls were all white and they had like lights pushing up against the wall, and there's like fun colors all around, and it was really kind of flashy, swanky.
Yeah, I'm resisting the urge to I love the idea of us just like going to some like sketchy basement, but no, you're right, it actually was really nice. And they custom made food for us in their kitchen with the whole vegan thing, which ties back to that we asked for way more vegan pizza than we needed. But yeah, I stood there for like 2 hours making people craft lemonade mocktails. It was so much fun, and like that's a conference vibe that like objectively is really good for us. It's good to see an organizer doing like handwork. It's not necessary, but it's like a fun conversation starter.
Totally. And then, so we kind of like mentioned it, but just for those who don't know, like in the behind the scenes, when you have a conference, you have a dinner very often. It's not always right before the conference. Sometimes it's after the conference, or in the middle or something. But if there's multiple days, but there's often a dinner where the speakers and sponsors get together and kind of like hang out with each other, get to know each other. And there's also, in addition to that, very often some kind of activity. And the activity that we chose was a duck tour. So a duck tour is a duck because, ducks fly in the air and they're on land and they're also in the water. So that's the joke. They're like these amphibious vehicles, which I guess were used in like originally were like war vehicles or whatever, and then got repurposed. And then the ones that there are today are newer. So, someone told us like, don't people die in these? And it's like, I don't know. And I looked, yeah, it turns out people did die in a couple of them, but they're completely overhauled now. There's a lot of rules and regulations. Like there used to be the tour guide was also the driver. Do you see the problem here? So now there's a law. The tour guide and the driver have to be different people. So, it makes it a little safer, you could say. So anywho, that was a really fun activity. So I think that was like a big hit. We're definitely going to do that again. It was funny because when we were talking about what should we do this year, I think like the idea was like, we got to find something else to do. And then we realized, wait a second, the only people who are going to be this year at the conference that are going to be on the duck tour that were last year are me and Josh. Everybody else is like all the new speakers. So it's, for them, this is their first time at SquiggleConf. So we could just do it every year and it's a first time for all of them. So it's just funny.
Yeah. It's very rare that conferences repeat speakers. Actually, not very rare. Many conferences choose not to repeat speakers year to year. I've been a repeat speaker occasionally. It's not a terrible thing to repeat speakers, but people who go to the conference year over year, they want variety. It's nice to have fresh new faces. You don't want the same group of people giving talks over and over and over again. That's not great for the industry. So there might be one or two repeat speakers, but it's very unlikely that it's going to be a significant percentage of the crew.
And speaking of Josh's wisdom, I guess this is a good time to say that I think like the only reason that we're doing this video now and that SquiggleConf even happened is because of Josh. And that's not because we put uneven amounts of work in or something like that. Josh had the wisdom to push in the beginning to just rip off the Band-Aid and do it. So there was a moment there. We were planning this for months before we kind of like picked a date and really committed to like, okay, we're really for sure doing this. And the thought was in the air that like, should we just push until spring 2025? Like spring 2025 hasn't even happened yet. And I feel like SquiggleConf was a million years ago. So much has happened. But I guess thank you, Josh, for having the, courage to push through and just say, let's just do it. It's not going to be perfect. We're not going to get everything right. We're not going to be as, like we said, with the run of show and like everything in this video. But I'm really glad that we did it. And in the end, it was a big success. There's no way to say, like, I think that we both really feel that there's no way to say it wasn't a huge success. There's lots of stuff that we feel like we did wrong, but that's always going to happen. And for the timeline, like we announced it, you said May, but actually it was like May 28th. So it's like,
yeah.
So it's like basically from June until, October.
5 months, less than half a year.
That's really a tight timeline to announce your conference to the world and then get all these CFP submissions and get the speakers to come and organize it and then like have the thing. And we did it. So I think we're really happy about how it all turned out. And like we said, we have an 8-person team for next year and it's going to be a lot easier to, pace ourselves and stay on top of it.
Dimitri, I can't let this slide. The difference between bravery and stupidity, I think, is the difference between knowing the thing you should be afraid of versus doing it anyway. Yeah, I mean, in retrospect, it was an objectively foolish decision on my part to push for SquiggleConf. And I neither of us lived in Boston at the time. I'm not saying it was a wrong decision. I'm saying it was a foolish decision because at the same time, overly ambitious. We can compromise on that. I was moving to Boston at the time. My spouse and I moved into a house like less than a month before the conference. We didn't really know the area that well. We just had like friends or like Dimitri's spouse used to live there. Blah blah blah. Like it was a rush. But I think between the two of us, we cover a lot of the like different areas of what you need to know. Like we wouldn't have been able to do it if Dimitri didn't already have an absurd AV setup for his meetup and a bunch of people around him who could help with it, and then spent the entire day doing that. So yeah, thank you, Dimitri. I think we did slot, I think, like fit well together in the things that we were able to do. And I think like, it's funny, like it still hasn't happened. I don't know. Maybe next year we'll do this video and we can say it'll happen. But Josh and I have never had like a fight. And we've both poured tens of thousands of dollars into this project of our own money. And we have a lot of skin in the game. And we have plenty that we could fight about. There's stuff that Josh totally screwed up. And there's stuff that I totally screwed up. And I think that at the end of the day, we have mutual respect and trust. And that made it a really good experience in the end. We were both coming at it from such a shockingly similar vantage point. We have very similar views on how a thing like this should go and what the goals should be and what we're doing it for. We have very similar motivations. And I think that made it a lot easier for the tough parts because, there were tough parts for sure. Yeah. I burned out like a maniac and dropped the ball on a bunch of stuff before the conference even happened, which was not good. That's not an excuse. That's not a pity me. That's just an explanation of like literally what happened was I like got frazzled like an overloaded circuit board and just like forgot a bunch of things. So yeah, very, very happy to be doing the 8-person team situation for this coming year. Very happy to have the learnings of the first year, and also very happy to have more than a year to plan the conference, or I guess slightly less than a year to plan
double the time. It's like
Yeah.
double the time and half the work in a lot of ways. Because so many of the things that we did last year, we're going to be doing like the duck tour, okay, is one example. But hello, the same venue, it's like the same hotel.
Yeah.
It's like we know that it works because we did it already. So we're not going to change those things. It was a great experience. So for us, that means we get to focus a lot more on finding all of those things that we missed, like we talked about in this video, and doing a better job of selling the city and telling people what cool things there are that they could do, and trying to communicate better and making it easy for them to get a visa instead of having to find us and contact us. Like, we can put effort into those things now, and all of that stuff is going to be even still for year 3. So personally, some people ask me, and I'm sure they've asked you too, Josh, like, how do you feel about what you did and all that? I don't feel like SquiggleConf can be given a score, a rating for us, like how we've done with it until like the 3rd year.
Yeah.
Like, I think that to us, it's like, that's going to be like, no excuses. This has to be amazing. It's going to be absolutely incredible. We know everything we need to know to really do this. And it's now just a job of doing it in the most excellent way we can with great speakers. But I mean, at the end, it does come down to the in-person experience, like the speakers and the talks and the people you talk with and who's there and the venue itself, how comfortable the chairs are, like all this, the food, all this stuff adds up,
Yeah, for sure. I had friends come in cross country who I so much appreciated for it. And I think it's incredible the difference a single attendee can make for good or for bad. Like someone who's like friendly and interested. You don't even need to be an expert on dev tooling or whatever. Just like be approachable and happy there. That improves the experience for everyone around you. And we had so many people have the ability to and choose to be that awesome person in attendance. It really made the conference special, I think.
Well, that's a good place to end it. So hopefully this is useful. I know this is not the normal MITS video about advanced TypeScript types, but actually you have one of those coming your way very soon. So I guess get ready for that. This is something we're probably going to do more on the SquiggleConf channel. So we'll be launching a channel with all the videos of the speakers from this year's SquiggleConf and future years. So we're posting this here because like that place doesn't really exist yet. But in the future, a video like this will probably exist over there on the SquiggleConf YouTube. But as that happens, you'll see it. And thanks for tuning in. And if you're thinking of starting a conference or anything like that, I guess reach out to us. Josh and I are both pretty available, but we'll put our information down in the description of the video. And if there's anything we can do to help you, we would both really enjoy that. I think we love helping people share. I mean, that's why we're making this video. We want to share what we learned, and maybe you can remember to ask the speakers what their t-shirt size is instead of having to guess, So, funny things like that. All right. Thanks for watching.